Good afternoon and welcome to Hard Talk on Power 102 FM digital platforms. Um, I'm sure David will put up all the different telephone numbers that you can call, you can WhatsApp, we are on YouTube, we are on Facebook. So you can, thank you, David. So WhatsApp messages only 318-1021. You can WhatsApp your comments. As I was saying, we are on Facebook, we're on YouTube, so you can leave your comments there and they will all come straight to me and I will make sure to holler and respond. We have a full show today. We have the US elections. We'll talk about that in our final segment with businessman Peter George at 5:20. The former Minister of Agriculture, David, I think you need to mute. David.
Hold on, Marsha.
Should I stand?
I'm sorry about that. That happened
That's
accidentally.
okay. That's okay. But it's just kind of like the weirdest song because then I was like, should I stand?
My apologies.
This is why my husband tells me always dress properly, even the bottom half that you guys don't see. I see Dr. Sijuan laughing. So we have the former Minister of Agriculture. He will also join us after Dr. Sijuan. So he will come on about 4:40. And we're going to start off with, I know the US election is hot news, but I think equally as hot and persistent and almost feels like it's there are certain categories. There's important and then there's urgent, like house burning down urgent. I think that Forex issue is now a crisis. And so I have invited I call her Doc on the show because of course we try to keep it a bit casual. Doc, we're trying to talk to young people today, girl.
Happy to do that anytime.
All right. So we've seen in the news things where farmers are not farmers actually, but the opposite. So food importers are saying that they are owing millions of dollars to suppliers, and the suppliers are saying, listen, we're diverting the shipments. We're not going to offload because we don't think that we're going to get paid. We saw in the media that some suppliers came to Trinidad. They tried to reason with the powers that be to say we need to get paid. So we are being told that come Christmas season, we may be looking at, and this isn't like I don't know. Some people will say pumpkin. We saw pumpkins in Price Mart, and I know. So I have that as one of the topics actually. Person saying, why can we focus on necessities? But we're seeing things like person talking about garlic, potatoes, rice. What would be considered necessities? These are real basic food items. The price, they're saying that the price will go up if these importers do not have access to Forex to be able to pay off, foreign suppliers. Talk to me.
Oh, well, all that you've said is in fact true. The country faces a foreign exchange crisis. That is fact. Okay, we are not selling to the rest of the world sufficiently to earn foreign exchange in order to meet the demand for foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is like a commodity. It's like a good. So if it's short in supply, the price is going to go up. If there's a whole lot of it, the price won't go down though in this instance because the foreign exchange price is determined by the government. So we have a fixed exchange rate. It won't go below the 6.78 whatever that you get in the bank, but it will certainly go up, not in the banking system, but it will go up in the black market once you have
me or you?
If you have demand outstripping supply. Are you hearing me?
Well, I totally went off there. So I was now asking David if that was me or if that was you, like if he's still seeing you. But my whole system sort of went there for a minute. So you were explaining, the demand and supply.
Yes. So I was saying, yeah, US dollars. Foreign exchange is like a commodity that it is impacted by the laws of demand and supply, not so much by the laws of in terms of if it's short, if it's if there's a surplus, that the price will go down because we have a fixed, we have a floating exchange rate, but yeah, it hovers around 6.7. That can't really go down. However, when demand outstrips supply, not the formal economy, but the informal economy is going to send the price up, and that's why we're buying US on the black market for $8. Some people may even be buying it at higher than that, because if you have any need and you can't get it on the formal market, then you're obviously going to have to buy it elsewhere. The thing about it, Marsha, is that we really shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be here because this has been coming for a very long time. This particular crisis we're in today, we didn't just wake up yesterday morning and wham, this crisis is upon us. It even predates COVID. In fact, I would say the signs were very clear when from around 2020, following 2013, when the supply of natural gas started to diminish significantly, which meant that we didn't have enough natural gas in order to keep our petrochemical plants going, in order to feed into our LNG plants, and that is what we export. Even as early as then, the signals were very clear that unless some miracle happens, our major sector, the energy sector, was going to continue to decline. And that is our major earner of foreign exchange. It generates about 80% of the foreign exchange that comes into the country. So that if a government can see that this is going to happen going into the future, what do? What you do is you start to say, well, look, man, I got to do something different. This source, foreign exchange is important because we're not an island unto ourselves, and therefore we can't produce everything that we need to consume. We can't produce potato and garlic and onions in the scale and the cost as if we are importing it. That is basic. We have to import these things. So that we should have done differently in terms of diversifying the sources from which we get foreign exchange. And by that, I mean things like tourism, agro-processing for the export market. There's so many manufacturing, non-energy manufacturing should have been really advanced in terms of where its capacity to be exporting and earning foreign exchange. But that is it. May we fail to do that. Government failed to put us on a pathway to a diversified economy. Any new sector, on average, it takes about 10 years for it to go through its teething problem and be on the road of sustainability. This was the 10 budget that this particular administration read. Okay, so that it was an imperative. I mean, I'm a broken record in terms of calling for economic diversification and diversifying our source of foreign exchange, but we have failed to do so. And therefore, now here we are in 2024, where we don't have the foreign exchange to buy potato, onion, and garlic. That's shameful for a country, Trinidad and Tobago, that was the mecca of the region, where we boasted of being one of the largest exporter of methanol and ammonia and LNG and all of these things. We were on the world map in terms of these things. And here we are today scrambling in order as individuals to get a few dollars, to be able to buy something online or to get a few dollars when we're traveling.
So we have two things that I want to bring up, because you have said, and it is something that I think, in growing up, it is something that we have spoken about, diversification. And you've also spoken about the length of time that an industry is going to take to really become a foreign exchange earner. So we are in a position where we have not diversified. There is nothing on the immediate horizon to suggest that we have a foreign exchange earner coming our way. So there's nothing to suggest that the supply of foreign exchange, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, right? I'm speaking, certainly not an economist. The most economics that I do is at home managing, the rising cost of food, right?
That's good economics.
I always tell people, you want to see how to live with little, you go and you ask a mother, open her cupboard and go,
Absolutely.
How do I make a meal fit for a king with this?
Correct.
But so we're not going to see supply increase anytime soon. Yes or no?
Unless something terrible happens in the global market space that pushes the price of natural gas and oil up again, as happened when the Ukraine and Russian war struck. It wasn't that we were producing more oil and gas or petrochemical. It was simply because the thing that we depend on, which is the price, which is determined outside of us, simply skyrocketed because of the war. So unless something like that happens, Marsha, there's no new game in town that is going to potentially replace the energy sector. And it is worsened by the crime situation. It is, you can't even start to fathom the extent. I mean, I'm sure you can. The extent to which our inability to bring crime under control is affecting what could potentially be, if we look around us, low-hanging fruits. Because, you know, we look and say, well, we're an island nation. We have sand, sun, and sea. I mean, look at Tobago. Tobago ain't no worse than Grenada or any one of these things. I mean, it's a no-brainer in these countries.
We would have seen the Yachting Association speak about, you know, the US, that, you know, the foreign exchange earner, you know, being outside of the hurricane belt, etc. And simple things, again, low-hanging fruit, as changing the way that whole process of them lining up and whatnot, and bringing in more yachts and stuff.
So Marsha, I mean, as you're on the yachting, let's just stay there for a minute. But again, I feel like a broken record talking on behalf of the yachting industry. Again, a no-brainer, because in around 2011, that industry was earning annually about $30 million a year. But you know, now it is probably maybe a quarter of that. The number of yachts coming into Trinidad and Tobago has declined so significantly. We were once, around that time, we were the mecca in terms of the yachting destination in the region for long stay, where the yachts would come and they would stay for about 6 months in the hurricane season. They would get all their repairs done. They would generate a lot of US dollar spending, where as the industry people have told me, a young man, you know, living in a low income level could jump in a maxi, come off at the Anchagaramas, clean 2 boats, and walk away with $200 at the end of the day. And bureaucratic impediments has basically brought that industry to death's door. You know, we used to be the mecca for boat repairs. We were well known globally for being a place where people would come to get sails built. In 2016, I think I interviewed the last company, and he was just about to close down, in the company that was building sails, because he couldn't compete. The duties on the imported materials were prohibitive, was so high that he could not compete with imported complete sails out of South Africa. So he simply closed his shop and left Trinidad and Tobago. We have so much of the human resource capacity that we depended on for that industry that have simply left. They've gone to the islands, and they may have gone further abroad. But basically, it is an industry now that we're kind of starting from scratch, and it is sad because we have so many comparative and competitive advantage in there. But Marsha, in this moment in time, many of what I last 5 years, if you had asked me, I said, I mean, tourism is a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, I mean, it is one we can kickstart the fastest. We already have a basic infrastructure. We have the beaches in Tobago. We have, we have a lot that's going for us. But then look at crime. Look at the
crime now. So crime obviously now doesn't. Tourism is no longer a no-brainer for us.
Correct.
And so it comes back down to, realistically, I do not see the supply increasing.
Correct.
Certainly we are not in control of it. As you say, God forbid there's a disaster somewhere that sends the oil price to $200, and that's, we shouldn't be hoping disaster hits for us to be able to manage, right? So one, you talk about the $8 black market figure. Should we be looking at, I know that in economics we talk about floating versus fixed, and whether we really are floating or not, I don't know. But should we be looking at moving from the six point something to $8? I know persons hate the word devaluation, and I mean, and there's a pride in it, because we used to talk about Guyana and how much dollars it is and how much, the conversion to US tends to make you feel like you're somebody. When you are 1,000 to 1 versus 5 to 1, you feel a little bit
less than.
somebody, you know.
Yes.
So is it a pride issue? I mean, what are the ramifications, the true ramifications? What is your opinion? Should we be moving it?
Again, Marsha, if you had spoken, if we were having this conversation, 5, 6, a little bit more than that years ago, I would have been anti-devaluation because the evidence suggests that it will not help our competitiveness because our propensity to import the things that we need to produce to sell to the rest of the world is very high. So if we're importing a lot in order to manufacture something and sell to the rest of the world, and we're paying really high for it, it means we can't compete. Okay, so that is the one of the main argument against devaluation. However, Marsha, in the current dispensation, we're actually operating at the black market rate. Businesses are costing, even those who are able to get the forex in the formal banking system at the lower rate, they are costing their goods and services as if they're paying the black market rate, because in more instances than not, they have to supplement it by buying on the black market. So the government is really just playing a little dolly house by, it's that thing, that pride thing that you just talk about, wanting to maintain this notion that our currency is strong. The IMF has been calling repeatedly every single year, has been calling on the government to move away from the current managed float that we have. They argue that our currency is about 13% overvalued and we need to do something about it. So, in fact, that is one means by which you can reduce demand. Because if you make the cost of the US dollar more expensive, obviously those who can't afford it will have to, do otherwise. Either businesses will close or individuals will simply have to not purchase. It is a straight line relationship. Okay, so that is something, but yet we keep pretending and we keep maintaining the foreign exchange. Government will have the central bank pump money into the system from time to time in order to prop it up, or they'll borrow in US currency and putting money into the system, etc. I mean, unfortunately, and it saddens me that the best solutions that are on offer from the government of the day is to be asking the multinationals to pay their taxes in US dollars. Now, the multinationals, the amount that they have to pay in TT dollars won't change. So let's say they have to pay 1 million, um, 7 million TT dollars in taxes, right? What these multinationals will do is they'll go to the bank, the commercial banks, and they'll give them the 1 million US, and they will get the 7 million TT and give it to the bank. Give it to the government. By the government asking that it is paid directly to government, it simply changes the hand in Trinidad and Tobago who gets the US dollars. It doesn't increase the supply of the US dollars, right? And the multinationals, they convert US and with commercial banks in order to pay local suppliers, etc., etc. That is already being done. So unless the minister can have a conversation and get the multinationals to pay us more, like there's the whole transfer payment issue that we've talked about, where what is happening is that the multinationals that are very diversified in the national space can sell let's say LNG, for example, can sell LNG to a sister company at a much lower than market price, and then that sister company then sell it to somebody else for a much higher price. So the larger profit stays within the company, but we don't benefit, because what we get is we get the royalties, etc., from the price that the multinational would have sold to itself, basically. Okay, so that is probably the only area that the minister has in the shortest of term to be able to impact on the supply of foreign exchange. And we're not hearing anything coming from the powers that be with respect to seriously addressing the issue of diversifying the economy into those spaces that can in fact generate foreign exchange. You see this one company approach that the government take. That is with the greatest respect, and I'm happy for any company that gets a little money from the government in the name of expanding into international markets. But you need to do these things at scale, Marsha, at scale. So you have to take and you have to say, okay, the focus, for example, is on agro processing of let's say, pineapple for an export market. And you want to therefore agglomerate or bring together all of the producers of pineapples with those who are interested in investing up the value chain into processing, whether it is in juice or in canned circles or in crushed or whatever. You got to bring them all together, and you got to create the enabling environment that will allow them to come together, cooperate, compete, and produce it at scale in order to be able to sell to the rest of the world. That is the only approach, and I could give you so many examples in the world where that is done successfully. But when your incentive by the state says, okay, whatever you're doing, there's a line of credit from the Exim Bank. If you're exporting, you could draw down on some US dollars in order to export. That's chuk really. That's like, kind of really not pushing the pendulum in the way that it needs to be pushed. We need to do it the same way we did oil and gas. And we need to do it big, or we need to go home, basically.
At this stage, it feels like we're going home. What about things like the choice? I mean, persons have been complaining about the transparency in the way that the foreign exchange is distributed, whether the priorities. So, it seems like there's a lot of vanity spending, I use the pumpkins at Price Mart, right? But
Halloween pumpkins, let's be very specific.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So let's be specific, because it's not, so decorative.
$100 each.
Yes.
For cooking purposes, for those of you who don't go to the market, $20 will get you a large size pumpkin to feed a family of 5. $20. Just so you understand. Yes. Right. Okay.
So, are these things really necessary? I've seen persons even speak about things like franchises. Growing up, every time someone, a family member will come from the States, they will say, but you're more American than we are. We again, I don't know if it's a pride thing. We always wanted to be like a mini America versus, sun, sea, and sand and this island life, because as if that felt beneath us or whatnot. But there is a lot of foreign exchange being spent on non-necessities. What's your take on that?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that, but I just want to put in, and I'd like us to talk about it, the impact of climate change. Okay, because that's really, really big. But okay, so the issue is, in an ideal world, we don't want to put controls on the foreign exchange market. You want it to be free and open. You want people to be able to, I want foreign exchange, I must be able to go and pay, give you my TT, get what I want. If visitors come in, tourists come in, it must be free for them to be able to change their money. If you have a foreign investor, he must be able to access the foreign exchange you need to repatriate his country. That's the ideal situation. That's what we want. That's what we had in the boom days, right? We didn't have no problems with respect to us being limited, except in the 1980s. I don't know, you may be too young to recall under the NAR government when we actually did go to the IMF and we put things on the negative list and all of those things, right? But it would appear that we seem to be getting close to that place where we have to start to do those things, because if we don't, the crisis that is upon us is significant. You started out by talking about the onion and the garlic, etc., right? Now, I've spoken to some of these larger business people, and what they're saying is that the way they bring in, they have a sense of what the market needs are with respect to these, because these are perishable items. So they can't just go on. It's not like a television where you could buy 1,000, you could stock it because it's not going to rot. These things are perishable items, so they have to have a planned schedule of importation in order to be able to meet the demand without shortages and surpluses on an ongoing basis. And they say they basically have this down to a science. So they plan their buying a few months ahead in terms of ordering from their supplier, but they are used to then when it's time to pay, they pay, and the goods come into the market. But in a situation where they can't get the foreign exchange in order to pay, that is creating some problems. Again, you talked earlier about the ships passing Trinidad and Tobago. The ships are not so much passing Trinidad and Tobago because we can't pay, though. The ships are passing because of the the port problems with respect to the
No,
ship
so also
price on the port.
that's a
Not it.
separate problem.
Yeah,
That's a
not
that's a
it.
whole other issue. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So the container, imagine a container load of potato scheduled to arrive in Trinidad, passes us by, goes to Guadeloupe, and is parked up on the port there, waiting and hoping to get on a ship. By the time it gets into Trinidad, it may not be good for consumption, but yet the supplier from here will have to pay the supplier abroad. So the person who's importing it. These logistical problems are the kind of problems when it comes to the ease of doing business that we need to sort out. Maybe we need to privatize the ports so that efficiency can lead.
But it's a double-edged sword, because
Yes.
from the time you speak about privatizing the port, persons jump up and say, well, you're giving it to the 1%, you're giving it to your financiers, you're giving it to this, you're giving it to that. So there's a trust and transparency issue where we feel we're not really wanting to privatize, even though good economics suggests we probably should. The government shouldn't be in the business of so many things that they're in. But then there
should not be in business at all, because they're not good at it. They're ultra inefficient at it, and you have to, the government, although interestingly, Point Lisas is a little bit different though, so because we don't seem to have the same kind of challenges at Point Lisas that we do, and government is a major shareholder in the Point Lisas estate in the ports, right? Yeah. So again, maybe we need to kind of try to duplicate the lessons from there at the port in Port of Spain. But that's an entire conversation we can have at a different time. Also, the cost of shipping has been going up because the entire global shipping industry is consolidated. So they control. And if you have an oligopoly situation, which are a few of them, then they could push the price up. So that has already started to happen. You said that the price will go up. Well, the price has already started to go up for these items. They've already gone up by about 12%. And they are anticipated to go up even further as we come. But let us be fair. The minister,
12% over how long?
It has already. What? I mean, I would say that within the last month and a half, the price of these bakes have already gone up. But let's be fair to the minister. After calling people mischievous and all kind of thing, he did get around to saying, well, he did get around to, after he tell the importers go to the bank, and while you're buying things, if they don't have money, he did backpedal and actually made the decision to provide a line of credit for basic food, basic medicines through the Exim Bank. Now, of course, the terms of those engagements, I'm sure, will remain very secret, and we are regular people who ain't gonna have that information, but we're hoping that it can be transparent and accountable, and it could see that need. So I think it's about $25 million a month he has put into there, and for that to take place. Could you just allow me to,
yes,
I need to just, if I'm just going to mute for half a second, okay?
Sure. So if you're just joining us, this is Hard Talk. Hi, Bisnath Prasad. Hello, I saw you log on very early, so I'm just using the time to one of our faithful listeners who always as soon as he logs on, he says hello. So I was just making sure to tell him hello. Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
you're talking about
right. So I mean, people need to,
and
and people need to understand there are a number of issues happening around, some of which we have no control over, right? So the issue of the minister has in fact done this, and now he's gone a second step, because if you look at today's newspaper, it is littered with articles on this whole foreign exchange crisis, right? Remember, the best solution is to increase the supply. That's the only.
That is the best solution. I want
to underlay that. Okay, the best solution is we got to increase and diversify the sources of foreign exchange, so that we're not held to ransom like what's happening now. The energy crisis, energy sector in crisis.
We have a crisis, but we have a crisis, so we have to manage the crisis. Correct. But we do have to see that there is a plan. Real plan.
Correct.
Now, you spoke a little bit about transfer pricing earlier.
But before you get to that, there's one other thing. And again, we have to give credit where it's due. The minister has also said, no, he said, well, the traditional system is the government don't interfere. The central bank don't interfere. The central bank has a certain amount of foreign exchange every month. It distributes its amount to the commercial banks based on their size, number of branches, customers, etc. And then it was left to the commercial bank in order to redistribute to how they see it fit, right? That's the current system. And he has said, maybe he's asking major stakeholders, and from what he said, he's going to meet with the chambers, etc., in order to determine whether some prioritization system is required in order to kind of instruct the banks. I believe we have no choice. It is an unfortunate thing. It is not an ideal situation, but I believe in this moment, in order to deal with the crisis and ensure that Halloween pumpkins are not coming into Trinidad and Tobago at the expense of potatoes and onion and garlic, we need some kind of mechanism, some kind of direction by the state, some kind of policy direction from the state that does that, not for forever, until such time that we recover. It might be 2027 according to the Prime Minister, because then that's when Dragon gonna dance, but that's another conversation as well.
A whole other conversation.
Yeah, but so that's the context, right? We're in a crisis. If you are in a crisis, you are a mother, you manage your household. When we were faced in COVID, when prices started to skyrocket, and you had to now go to the grocery and lean for the cereal but put it back. And you have to do that, Marsha. Exactly. So we are in that place. We are in that place where we had to lean for the Halloween pumpkin, but put it back because the country cannot afford it. There might be individuals in the country who can afford it, but
and I think that also, I think that is, I spoke maybe, well, we didn't have a show Thursday, so it would have been maybe the week or the week before, whatever. And I said, I think, for a small country, we do have a lot of polarization. It's almost as though two different countries, sometimes you feel two different economies, because you see one home with 3 BMWs and everything imported, every version of cereal and Halloween pumpkin. And then you see another home that, have to work out, well, maybe today we do with no meat. Maybe today, I have friends who have spoken, they talk about, currying the sauce, even it used to be aloo and egg and aloo, but now you can't even do egg. You could, I'm a mom, it's okay. I've once had my daughter come and say, "Hi, everybody."
There's just somebody else that is trying to get my attention. Again, he just called me again. Mom. Yeah, he just called me again. Could you just check him again, Mom? Yes, I'm on the thing. Yes. Oh gosh. Anyway, yeah. So my apologies.
No,
okay, we can continue.
Yes, that's fine. Absolutely fine.
But yes, Marsha, inequality. You're talking about the issue of the skewed distribution of the national pie, right?
Well, the gap. That ever widening gap.
Yes, and again, it is a result of poor management of an economy. It is the result of not having measures in place to ensure that is an economy where you are growing multiple sectors, where persons can see job opportunities, where they can see the opportunities for their wages and their salaries to be going up as inflation goes up. We are a country that is operating on wages and salaries, maybe 2012 or something, basically. It is a buyer's market. You have more people looking for jobs and there are jobs available, and then there's the impact of inflation. These things are real, and then you have government slapping onto us things we didn't plan for, the increase in the prices of gas, the property tax, reform of gate, which means that people would have planned to get gate throughout the university life of their child, and now suddenly they're earning that 10,000, but they're earning $10,100, and because of that they now have to pay 25% of it, and they have to find the money to do that. The rate of mortgage closures has been on the rise for quite some years now in Trinidad and Tobago. These are very real things that we're not doing sufficient in order to address these things, and that is an unfortunate thing. So the foreign exchange crisis is only one symptom of an economy that unfortunately has been poorly managed. Crime is the other one. Okay, that we're suffering the issue of living in a country where we feel so unsafe. It's impacting on brain drain. People are leaving the country. And, up to day before, I use day before loosely, young people that were talking to me were leaving the country because of crime. Since this foreign exchange situation has worsened in more recent time, people are now leaving, not just because of crime, but because of this foreign exchange crisis and where they see it going. Other things being equal in the economics, we say, if you don't change, if you don't do something to intervene and push the thing in a different direction, and if it continues as it's going, and I'm talking about middle management people now, not just young graduates coming out of university and can't find a job and therefore migrating. I'm talking about individuals like in their late 30s who have been working for a while, who have now institutional knowledge, not just the academic knowledge. These are the people we need to keep in this country. Two professionals, they have children who are teenagers or a little bit younger than that, and they are prepared in this moment to take a pay cut, to reduce the quality of living, and it's not equality, the standard of living in a foreign country, because they do not anticipate in this moment that things are going to get better here. What is the government doing in order to be able to give people comfort that that's going to change, to tell us a dragon will dance in 2027 if common sense prevails? There is a strong likelihood that it may not happen. We're all praying for it to happen, mind you. I really praying for it to happen, because we need it to happen. Because if it doesn't happen, the basis on which the current energy sector can continue will not be there. But even as you continue to focus there, put the same kind of energy of an entire cabinet, for Christ's sake. Mr. Stuart Young is not the only game in town. Put the rest of the cabinet to work. Diversification is not a minister cutting ribbon at a mall. Come on, that is what's happening. The growth that is taking place in the non-energy sector, Marsha, is taking place in trade and distribution. So we're real good at buying from the residual, which needs foreign exchange, to sell to ourselves. The proliferation of malls that we are seeing in this country in order to sell just what we buy. And we are not seeing sufficient happening in real manufacturing. In fact, some of our major manufacturers have moved their manufacturing out to Trinidad and Tobago. Nestle, Unilever, they have taken it elsewhere. Why? We have to ask the why, and we have to find the solution in terms of how we bring them back in. Foreign investment. Foreign investment has been on the decline in this country for probably the last 12, 13 years. It has been on the decline. We're not bringing foreign investors, are not coming into Trinidad and Tobago. What aren't we doing? We have to take stock, and we have to answer these questions going forward. We didn't talk about climate change, and I know my time is probably running off because I see Vassant has just popped up. But we talk about diversification. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, no brainer, sand, sea, sun, the usual fare, but not anymore, Marsha. Because soon for tourism, that sand, sea, and sun will not be our advantage because of the extreme heat. Tourists are not going to want to come and sit out in the sun. That's a reality. The health issues tied into that. So we have to start to rethink what tourism is. Even as we plan to move it forward, we have to rethink and reshape it. Agriculture is another thing. Climate change is so impacting our traditional form of agriculture. The crops are totally confused. The plant don't know when to bear anymore. There was a series of articles in the newspaper where the farmers were talking about their losses because of climate change. So we need to rethink agriculture going forward that takes into consideration these things. And our budget did very little to give us the comfort that this government is focused on that.
Well, Mr. Barroth, she took you straight into the conversation because she spoke about agriculture and rethinking agriculture and the crops being confused. So would you like to join in at this point? Let's welcome the former Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Vasan Barroth. Dr. Sejuan, you're welcome to stay on when you can. Yes. And so Mr. Barroth, join the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me on, Marsha, and hi to my good friend Indira, an expert in agriculture for sure. So I don't know if there's anything I can add to
Well, we
to
did.
the last
We were
what-
talking foreign exchange. We were actually talking foreign exchange for the last 40 minutes. So it's almost as though, she saw the time, and being a good host, she was so smooth. She just worked straight into, because I had announced from the start that you would be joining us at 4:40. So, I don't know if she planned it, but she just worked her
She gave me a
conversation
good entry.
Yeah.
straight from foreign
She
exchange.
made it easy for me.
Yes.
Absolutely. I just kind of hit a 4 and then I no, that can't be. I hit and we ran a 1, right? So then I handed over I gave you the bat of, your face in the wicket now.
Okay, so is it coincidental you're wearing that color, Indira?
My.
No, it
Anyway,
just happened to
no
me. I
answer.
just saw it in my closet and I thought it looked nice. Yeah.
That's beautiful
I
in
see
the color.
Marsha's in her
Oh,
ILP colors.
exactly, right?
And you might say I'm in Gary.
And he's in
Gary
NTA.
Gary,
colours,
that's
I can't
And
remember
you
which
are
one.
in NTA, and you're in your NTA colors. But it's not a political show. We are just
Not at
speaking
all.
current affairs. And
Well, I'm glad.
no one is, I mean, we do not discuss any personality. We do not, we don't bash the person. It's all about the issues. So I pride myself in keeping the show very neutral and very independent and away from the bacchanal. And so there are some guests that we just don't even bother to have because it's too much bacchanal. And
Who are they?
Vasan just wanted to trip some trouble. That's why he just ignore that and just get on with the matter.
Anyway. All right. Tell
So
me.
we didn't get to talk about the transfer pricing. I don't know if we want to go back there, but we could keep it in the back somewhere. But we're talking agriculture because I had seen in an article where and I think a lot of persons just sort of read the headline where we were signing off a deal with India for rice production. So I think persons immediately thought that what we were doing was importing the rice. But we wanted to sort of set the record straight on air that it was a deal with research and development rather than bringing in rice from India. That was the first thing.
Correct.
The first step.
Yes. I think it was an
Yeah.
MOU that talked about technical assistance. But I think in a response I gave to you, Guyana is on our doorstep, and Guyana has been very they've been very productive in their rice industry over the last many years. In fact, Guyana is a major exporter of rice, as Indira would know, to Holland and so on. And in fact, they have far better yields than we have here in Trinidad with the strains that we've got for two reasons. One, of course, over the years they've developed a higher yielding crop. But secondly, over the years, what we have done is we've reused the same seeds over and over again. And every time you use the same seeds, what happens is that you get less yield. So whereas maybe the Guyanese are getting maybe 3,000 or 4,000 pounds per acre, we're probably getting less than 2. So my first choice would have been to try to get some technical help with the Guyanese, but I think our government and the Guyanese government aren't on the best of speaking terms for whatever reason. So I guess they're going to India. But I mean, that's not to say that India doesn't know about growing rice. They do. But there's so many different issues when you're looking at geographic issues, you're looking at cultural issues, that you would tend first to go to those who have more in common with you than not. But that's their prerogative.
I saw Dr.
It's a question really, because I had seen in the newspaper, not so much research and development, but I heard about an investment in a rice processing facility.
Well, I think that rice processing facility is probably just Ulion now. It's been, I think it's probably maybe 40 or 50 years old. I was told, or I read somewhere, maybe about 3 years ago, Indira, that the gentleman who owns Old Mac, who he brings rice in from Guyana and he repackages it in Trinidad. I am almost certain, I don't remember his name now, but I'm almost certain that he had an interest, and National Flour Mills had announced that the rice mill had been leased to him. So that he was looking at making an investment in Trinidad and Tobago to produce rice, or well, not produce more rice, but also to put down a parboiling facility, which is the rice that we have here. Put down a parboiling facility, but utilizing the mill to process the paddy. But I don't know what has become of that. As you know, with this government, there's always a big splash about everything, and then nothing happens. So I'm a little bit in the dark with what happened to that. But we currently, as I think I mentioned to you, Marsha, in one of our WhatsApp exchanges, we currently import about 30,000 tons of rice per annum. We had put out, and I still have it here because I always have it on my desk. This is the National Food Production Action Plan 2012 to 2015, right? It's still up on the ministry's website as far as I know. But what we have done is it was very systematic in terms of this page says commodity focus, right? And we had identified certain crops rice amongst them, and here's the listing here. And it talks about staples, which is rice, sweet potato, cassava, breadfruit, and then vegetables, which would be tomatoes, hot peppers, pumpkin, melanja, and dasheen. And then fruits, bananas, citrus, mangoes, pineapple, aquaculture, livestock, which is sheep and goat, dairy goat, and then pulses, pigeon peas, and bodie. And what we had done is not just identify these as being critical to food security, and of course reducing the amount of foreign exchange we are using. We actually said here what our current consumption is in this column here. We then said what we had planned to do from 2012 to 2013, 2014 to 2015, 2013 to 2014, 2014 to 2015, and it was a progression over the 3-year period in terms of how much production we would embark upon. But in addition to that, we also then look. So, for example, with rice, on the other page here, we had 1,700 hectares of rice that we'd rice fields that we were now going to bring in to production of rice. In fact, we had invited and we had given 100 acres, and I think maybe 200 acres eventually, to a Guyanese company called Three Brothers or Two Brothers. I don't remember the name of it. I think it's Two Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had actually come, they'd started the process. So we were looking to move from 1,700 hectares to about 3,000 hectares of rice land that would have produced somewhere in the region of about 20,000 tons. So we would have been able to produce maybe 2/3 of our requirements in Trinidad and Tobago over the period 2012 going through to about 2017, over a 5-year period. So, all of those things have fallen by the wayside. So it's as Indira, I'm sure, would have said, this is not rocket science. This is just paying attention to what's important and just allocating the resources and the skill set and the political will to getting it done. It's like, I always say, agriculture should be treated in the same way that we treated Point Lisas in the 1970s, right? It's an infant industry, although it's been here a long time. It's still an infant industry in terms of its development. And so therefore,
Doc actually said exactly the same thing.
Who's
earlier? Doctor, she said exactly the same thing. That is how we should have treated agriculture.
Yeah, she's probably been listening. Anyway, so what it needs is hand-holding, right? It needs nurturing, it needs hand-holding, and it needs attention, needs nurturing. In the same way that we did with Point Lisas, if we understand that agriculture is critical to our sustenance and our level of dependence we have on the rest of the world, okay, then we need to handhold it until it becomes, till you get the critical mass so that more and more people want to get involved in agriculture, particularly young people want to get involved in agriculture because they actually see a future for it, for them in it. And only then, maybe 3 to a 5 year period, can you start letting go the reins and letting the sector thrive on its own. But you know, we started that process in 2012, in 2010 to 2012, of course. I moved on to trade, and a lot of that fell by the wayside. But you know, a lot of agriculture, in terms of developing it, has to do with how you encourage young people to want to get involved, right? But it's also how you change the palate of our citizens. Because we've grown accustomed to, for example, I just went to Massey stores in Westmore on my way home, looking to buy local fruits, right? The only local fruit they had was pawpaw. There was nothing else. Oh, they had some pomsity, that's it. But it was apples, it was grapes, it was, you name the imported fruits, they had it on the shelf. And in fact, you will notice that whenever mango is in season, mangoes are more expensive than apples. How is that possible in a country where we have the climate, we have the soil, we have everything? One of the last things I was able to do, but it has now failed, is I recognized that breadfruit was a tree, was something that, a crop, well, a tree that when I was growing up, almost, well, I know a lot of people who had breadfruit trees in their yard. And breadfruit is a highly complex carbohydrate, okay, very good for diabetes and so on. But now you very rarely see breadfruit trees unless you maybe go to the country or so. And one of the things I did just before I left was we were able to get 10,000 breadfruit plants available, make 10,000 breadfruit plants available at Centennial to be given free of charge to anybody who wanted them, right? So you have some land in the back of your yard, you plant a breadfruit tree. And we were trying to now encourage everyone, or as many people who are interested, to come and take a free breadfruit plant and plant it. I suspect that most of those plants died, unfortunately. And so that initiative also fell by the wayside. Again, because of political will, because of a lack of initiative. And that's what happens when you move ministers around frequently. Sometimes whoever takes over, even though it may be someone from your own organization, from your own party, they may not have the same vision for the sector. You know, so that's where we are. But Indira is quite right. We have to handhold it until it becomes part of our culture, until our school children start to recognize the importance of it. So one of the things we did, again, to just create the pull factor, was we introduced sweet potato fries into KFC to try and replace potato fries. And the reason we did that was try to get children asking their parents for sweet potato fries, because a lot of parents buy KFC for the children or for their home. And we started with, KFC at the time had 16 outlets. We started with 7 outlets, and it was always sold out. It was always sold out, always sold out. It started to, what we did was, because sweet potato was more expensive to produce than potatoes coming into the country, I realized that until we can create the economies of scale, only then will we be able to get the cost of sweet potatoes down. So what we did, we had an initiative where the ministry subsidized each pound of sweet potato that was going to KFC, so that KFC was paying the price for sweet potatoes as they were paying for regular potatoes coming in. But of course, it's a developmental stage. That's why I say it's hand-holding. So once people start to become more accustomed to it, once people start to ask for it, and once it starts to replace regular Irish potatoes coming into the country, then you start to develop the economies of scale. Then you start to look at different strains of sweet potatoes, and they will tell you, sweet potatoes come like this, they come like this, they come. So it's a labor-intensive exercise to peel them because they're not homogeneous in size. So it's difficult to mechanize the peeling of it. But once you start to acquire the taste for sweet potato, the citizens get the palate for it, then you can start to introduce new strains of sweet potato that will all be a homogeneous size. So then you can start to mechanize peeling it and so on. And then you start to, export logs, and you start to do all sorts of things, but you've opened up that whole avenue for all of our ground provisions, whether it's yam, whether it's sweet potato, whether it's dasheen, and so on.
And of course,
if I could just,
sorry.
Yeah, if I could just add just a few things to what Bassan said. Bassan, I will say that you are probably the only minister that ever set a target for moving the contribution of agriculture, its contribution to GDP. You actually did set a target.
I did, yes.
And it was an unfortunate thing that you were moved, because talking to especially farmers on the ground, there was a great likeness for you in terms of the work that you. Just a few things and then I'll leave. On the issue of breadfruit, yes, your initiative, but there's also an ongoing initiative, Royal Bermudas. Royal, is committed in terms of his motto is a breadfruit tree in every home, and he gives them away free, and he goes all over the country, giving away breadfruit because he's really committed to that. So that's that. On the issue of rice, I remember, I think it was about 2018. I did a series, and I interviewed the rice growers in Trinidad and Tobago. And basically what they said is that government policy was what was destroying the rice industry. Again, it's about the ease of doing business that we talked about, because they're producing rice, but the government, through the national flour mills, the rice mill was buying their rice and using it to produce pet rice. And therefore, almost automatically, local rice was being branded as pet rice, not for human consumption. And then they were being paid very minimal by the flour mill. And then there were these huge delays in paying them that money, so that the ability
when did you interview them with that?
This was about 2018.
Right.
2018.
September 8th. I just double checked it here, right? I interviewed someone from the Agricultural Society, and rice farmers have said categorically that they can produce all the rice that we need. They can, but they refuse to, because NFM currently are taking 2 years to pay.
That's right.
2 years to pay.
Correct. Yes.
We are now producing 4% of the rice that we produced 4 years ago. Exactly. So when you're saying holding hands and growing this this industry, we've gone totally backwards. In 9 years, we are now producing 4% of what we produced 9 years ago. NFM taking 2 years to produce. At the same interview, they had said that between milk and rice, we could save $100 million in forex alone. So I know that you've said the good economics is increase supply of the foreign exchange, but there are places where we certainly can reduce our import bill. And again, it's political will or bad policy. Why would NFM take 2 years to pay our rice farmers?
Systemic destruction of an industry. And that's the point that I'm making. And there are some, like the rice farmers, they're ready to step up to the task of producing what they ask, what they need is. And in their case, they probably don't even need so much hand holding, as they probably need more an enabling, facilitating environment that can allow them to be able to do what they have to do. And on the issue of local fruit, this would be my last word, and then I will leave. You are correct. We can't, it's not simply not available. And it's not available because we haven't prioritized its production. So there are, sometimes it begs because some, like the orange, for example, we destroyed our orange industry when we closed Carney Limited, which was a major suppliers of fresh oranges on the market. We closed Carney and we simply allow the orchards to simply go the way of the grave. Basically, that created not just a shortage of local oranges on the market, but it also stifle the local value-added juice producers, the fresh juice producers, because that's where they got their oranges from. So again, this is disconnect between action and what the repercussions of the actions are, leading down the road. Pomsite, where are the pomsite or orchards? Where are the avocado orchards? We should be producing avocado not only for consumption, and therefore we shouldn't be importing the container loads that keep coming into the country and are being sold, and sometimes people see it selling on the side of the road and they think it's local avocado and they buy it, and when they go home they leave it for it to get soft, and because that's what they're accustomed to. When they cut it, it's black inside, because you have to understand the nature of that avocado. It's different to our fresh avocado. But not just for local consumption, we could be producing avocado for the pharmaceutical and for the beauty industry, because it's and that is where major value added, and we can be earning significant foreign exchange from going that kind of route. But we're simply choosing not to do it.
Guava,
and that's my last word.
guava
I will
juice,
leave you
guava
and
jam,
Marsha.
guava everything.
Yes.
I'm
let's talk
saying
about the
guava,
let me
how
leave with the cocoa industry, which government
cocoa.
policy but articulates as a champagne industry, and they boast of our fine flavor cocoa, which we do. Any amount we could produce, we could sell at premium price to the rest of the world. Do you know where production went between 2022 and 2023? It went from 85,000 kilograms
kgs, yeah.
to 8.5 kilograms. You know how much we used to produce in the 1930s? 37,000 tons. Do you want me to repeat that?
Repeat it.
1930s, 37,000 tons. 2022, 8.5 kilo, I'm saying this one right, kilograms, down to 8.5 kilograms in 2023. It increased by a couple of 100% in 2024, but still just a few more kilograms. So there's a huge disconnect between government policy, what you're stating, and what's happening on the ground. And if we don't produce the fine flavor cocoa, how can we move up the value chain in terms of the chocolates and producing it at the scale to be able to have container loads of chocolate that we can export? Because chocolates is something that you have to maintain the what you call it of the product, the authentic. I can't remember the word, but you can't ship it. You have to ship it in a reefer container in order to maintain the shape and all of the things that goes with it, or it will melt and it will freeze back, and you can't put it on a shelf. You can't put it on a European shelf like that. So there's so much. The disconnect continues to be very high, and unless we fix it, we're spinning top in mud. So Vasant, enjoy.
I'm gonna just tell you, just before you go,
yeah,
just a couple of things that you talked about. Pomsite. During our time, there was a company called Taba. I don't know if you remember Taba.
I remember Taba very well.
Okay. They were very inefficient, but one of the things that they were doing was looking at niche areas for agriculture. And one of the things I never forget, one day I went to Taba and they asked me to taste a particular juice, and it was Pomsite juice. And it was made from puree. So they were pureeing it, and we had planted several orchards of dwarf Pomsite trees. So you didn't have to climb up on it. It was just dwarf, like 5 feet high. And I can't remember where these orchards were, but I visited them, and they were laden with pomsites. They were just taking these pomsites off the trees. They were picking them, and of course, because they're dwarf, you can mechanize a lot of the picking and so on, right? And I remember keeping that puree in my freezer for like about 2 years and continue using it and continue. Now that sort of thing is perfect for an export market, perfect for the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they would latch on to it. The other thing with cocoa, I remember going to a cocoa show in France when I was minister, and I went with a delegation of maybe 5 or 6 of us, a few from the ministry and a couple of farmers. And we were just walking around. We were nobodies, really. But this was a show, an international show for high-end chocolatiers. People who really made like Swiss chocolates, French chocolates, but high-end chocolates. All of them had their own recipe books and they're very snobby people. And we got, walking around, nobody taking us on. And eventually somebody got wind of the fact that we were from Trinidad and Tobago. Well, it was like the Pied Piper. Everybody kept following us around the show because they wanted Trinidad cocoa to put in their chocolates. And what they were doing is just to be able to say they had Trinitario cocoa in their chocolates, they would add like 5% of it to the whatever else they had, just to be able to put on the label Trinitario cocoa from Trinidad. So you're absolutely right. It's, as they call it, black gold. We have it here. We talk about it, but we do nothing about it, unfortunately.
I just need to add on that in terms of another thing we have done wrong. So our Trinitario cocoa, we've not patented it. So that's that. So we are not enjoying the benefits. So any company could put our cocoa on their product, and they can market it, which is a big, as Vasanth is saying, that's a big marketing sell, and we get nothing from that. Again, I remember going to into Europe, going into some of these boutique chocolate shops because I was really focused on cocoa at the time, and picking up the bars and reading at the back of it and seeing it's being marketed, the Trinidad and Tobago Trinitario cocoa in it is being marketed, and not patented. I also went to Italy and I did a chocolate tour, which gave me an experience from bean to bar. Now I'm sure they never even see what a bean look like or what a tree look like, but the bean part of it was to put me sitting in a room and show me a video of the cocoa field. We have that here. We could actually give people the real experience, but people are going to Italy where they only do the last part of the value adding, but they're selling the entire value chain. So there's so much that we can do that we're not doing, and that's my last word.
You're talking. I remember you. No. We're gonna just stay till 5:20. But you were talking about tourism and changing the way that we think about tourism and Sunsi and San. And so you're talking, and I'm seeing because I went to Belgium. I went to Belgium to go into a chocolate factory. Recently we went to Margarita, and my daughter's like, "What kind of chocolate toy is this?" Because we've danced the cocoa in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, these kinds of experiences. And I spoke to you about that very early on, where I said, is it a pride issue where we feel like we want to look more like a mini New York rather than embrace island life? Because things like dance the cocoa, things like hiking through the waterfalls, all of these things are real opportunities. I was about 25 at the time. I just come back, so maybe about 23. I just come back from backpacking through Europe. And I was the only person all the time ever who was from the Caribbean. Like, and they always said, well, my parents go to the Caribbean because the Caribbean is for just relaxing and drinking, sipping on a margarita, and that's for after retirement. And I would explain to them, all the different things that we do. And these type of these young people were like, what? They would want to do these hikings. Driving. We drive around, like to over the hills, like Lade Young, something simple. I'm thinking of it, but it's not coming to mind. Like when you're going to Asa Wright and you're driving through these fields. What are the fields?
That's that kind of the rainforest, driving through the rainforest.
Yeah, so if you were to do it from drone footage, it's like vines. It looks like it's covered, and it's like driving through like a net of produce, and all of these things, that kind of adventure tourism, that kind of ecotourism. We just and so I had bought the website CaribbeanBackpacking.com because again, it was a whole experience, that young persons who are taking that gap year would want to do. And we've not explored that at all. We've just not really dug into the different And well, of course, as you say, now it's not low hanging fruit because we have crime and all of that. Now it's a whole different ball game, right?
But we still have to. I mean,
years ago,
notwithstanding crime, we still have to, focus on these things. And what I have noticed is,
well, you know what? You know what? You're right, because in Margarita, I remember saying, but this feels like two different countries because they put us into a resort,
Mexico,
then they put you into a bus, and then you go somewhere, and then you go back into the bus, and then you go somewhere else.
so
So they have not
Mexico,
allowed, Mexico,
you
they've not
know,
allowed their situation.
Jamaica.
Yeah.
Do you know, ladies, that and Dara probably knows this, the cocoa research unit in Trinidad and Tobago is the oldest surviving cocoa research unit in the world.
We have the largest
In
gene
the
bank.
world,
Yeah,
we have the largest gene bank.
gene bank in the world. So that in itself is an experience where cocoa lovers would want to come to. People go to France for 1 week in order to bathe in public chocolate baths. Chocolate is a huge thing. St. Lucia has tried to piggyback off the whole cocoa thing. So you have Hotel Chocolatier, you have another one, and they're all built around the whole chocolate experience. So some of it is happening in the islands around us. Some of it is happening here at a very micro level where individuals are, they're making a little chocolate here and there, and they're trying to do a little something. But imagine if government policy and government support was to coalesce around these individuals, bring them together, and really say, listen, let us create a strategy to really make Trinidad and Tobago a chocolate destination, what the potential could be.
And scorpion pepper.
That's I
Scorpion
Googled.
pepper.
So I Googled, right? Because again, you don't want to just buy, if you export the pure pepper, it could rot wherever. You want to either do flakes and I Googled it. And the price of a small bottle of flakes from scorpion pepper was so high. But we're almost producing none right now anymore. I mean,
you get it in the market and so on occasionally.
But not the it's kind of
No.
like a what's the word outside child of
Like a grafted
pepper.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know why, Indira? What happens is the farmers, because they're not concentrating solely on scorpion, they grow it with the Scotch bonnet peppers.
Precisely.
So basically they cross,
And
so you
also,
don't get it, you don't get pure scorpion pepper.
Yeah. And also the scorpion pepper is because of the heat content. You can't, if you plant it in this piece of land, you have to rotate it. You can't plant back immediately on that because the heat is so much it damages the soil. So you have to kind of treat the soil before you could plant. Sound like a real agriculturalist, eh? I do, don't I? I'm an economist, but it just happens to be a sector that I could talk about, okay? Our scorpion pepper used to be the hottest in the world. We were taken over by the Carolina Reaper. You know what they did? They came again. We didn't protect the IP. We didn't register the IP for the scorpion pepper. So California, the people come, they take our scorpion pepper, they do research on it, they take the DNA, and they produce the Carolina Reaper, which then surpassed. This is the hottest pepper. And the second hottest pepper is another they surpass themselves. Because again, with these things, you can't sleep on it. Because you have the hottest pepper today, you can't just say, okay, it's going to be like that, because there's somebody who's going to be looking to take you over.
It's like the West Indies cricket team, right?
Exactly. That's right. Precisely.
Yeah.
And so the Carolina Reaper, those people said, yes, we have the hottest now, but we can't sit on this because somebody else is going to come and take us over. So they further refined in order to surpass the Carolina Reaper to have the hottest pepper in the world. Research and development. We have Kariri. We have University of the West Indies. Our oldest faculty is agriculture. Where is that role for that university and that faculty in terms of the development agenda of Trinidad and Tobago? We have to connect the dots. That is what you do if you want to develop sectors. But gentlemen, I really should leave. And Vasant, I apologize for taking up some of your time.
Don't worry, you'll buy me a coffee.
I will. But why didn't you come on since 4 o'clock? We could have been.
I was invited at 20 to 5. I'm very disciplined,
Marsha, it's your fault.
It is now. Next time I know, I will have you both on at the same time.
And I'm
Next
very
time.
indisciplined. I was invited.
No,
on
next time you
4:40.
have to get Indira off at 4:39.
Exactly. Before he comes on. Exactly. That is true. I'm indisciplined. So
The
my
last time,
apologies.
and so I am learning that she is very indisciplined, because the last time I had her, was the opposite. She didn't talk at all. She just let I had two young men, and they
She likes
talked.
older men. She
They
likes
were
older men.
they were younger. I like younger
These were
men.
two young men. These were two young men.
Yeah.
And
It was
she just
so-
said,
yeah.
I'm enjoying listening to y'all. I'm not talking at all. And so she just let them talk.
Exactly, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Gotta-
becoming
we-
one
we
of my
gotta
favorite
encourage.
guests.
I don't need
Yes.
to encourage Vasant. He's seasoned in this game, you know? You have to encourage the younger ones. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So,
Have a
so
good
David, I don't
Yep.
know if my other guest is there, but before, so Mr. George is now here. Vasant, you're welcome to stay. I mean,
Oh, I thought we hadn't started yet.
no, exactly.
That's a good one. Yeah. I'm sure Peter would love to have you on with him.
Exactly. I feel
Oh, really? It's actually 5:20. I
It's
see. Okay.
5:20.
Hi,
It is
Peter, how you doing?
5:20.
Where to go? It's still early.
I see you had a big party the other night. You blocked up the whole road.
Why don't you pop in on your way home?
What? Anyway, lovely to be on.
So our show is actually designed to be like this, right? It's not meant to be, and I always say it's a conversation. It's not meant to be a stiff interview where you answer, you this, you that, time's up, you go. So if you want to join in and you want to harass Peter for the whole time, you're welcome to, because Peter, I don't know if you were listening on, but we actually never got to interview Mr. Barath. Oh my gosh, we never got to interview Mr. Barath. He was supposed to discuss agriculture, but you spoke.
I did. All 2 minutes of it, yes, I did.
But some of the contributions that you made, I normally take a note in my head. I'm thinking to myself, so I don't necessarily look at the views for a 2-hour show, right? Because our generation, we just need 30 seconds and 1 minute and we run with it. So I'm normally taking note of what time someone says something that I think is TikTok worthy. And in the short 2 minutes that you spoke, you know what? I wrote it down because it was clear, it was to the point, and it was TikTok worthy. So don't worry, no one will know based on my TikTok that we overtook your entire interview and you didn't get to.
So I could actually, now what you're telling me is really go on TikTok to see my interview. To hear
Well,
what I have to
yes,
say.
but I'll send you the link. You see, I'm a good host. I'll send you the link. I'm efficient like that, man. So we're moving away.
I'll leave you with Peter. He's very accomplished, and I would probably not have anything to add at all. So
fine.
I'll leave you guys.
Well, have a great evening, and thank you very much for taking time to join the conversation with Indira.
Always my pleasure.
Okay.
All right, Peter. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
So we were speaking foreign exchange before. We were speaking agriculture before. We were speaking diversification before. Talking about the cocoa industry, talking about lack of patents, talking about the lack of political will to diversify, to understand the importance of agriculture, etc., etc., etc. The US election was yesterday, so of course that's a hot topic. It probably is as hot, though I don't think it will last as long as the foreign exchange conversation. So I'm just giving you all of that because, if the conversation can sort of flow and you can add to it, you're more than welcome to add to it. I tend not to say, okay, well, this segment is over, so, we're moving into this now. But we spoke a lot about, obviously, the foreign exchange crisis and what that would mean for everything. Are we at a stage where we may need to limit some of the non-necessities that come in? The Halloween pumpkin at Price Mart came up, unfortunately, because some, basic things like potatoes and garlic, food suppliers are saying, they can't get foreign exchange for and whatnot. So that's just to give you a little history of what we were talking about before. But I did invite you here to talk about the US election and what that would mean for Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, if you go through social media, whether it's misinformation, whether it's panic, whether it's propaganda, who knows? But you're seeing a whole set of stuff. People talking about immigration, what it's going to mean for the Caribbean, racism, all sorts of things just pop up all over the place. And I feel as though the Caribbean timeline, like I guess they wanted Harris. And there's this sense that, well, we're just not going to be welcome in the States anymore. We're going to be, our economy is going to be bothered by it. Trump is going to go after Venezuela. So the dragon will never dance. There seems to be a lot of panic on my social media by Trinis that Trump has won. Set the record straight.
Well, I mean, I think it's a bizarre level of phobia. I heard you say we're not going to be allowed back into the U.S. and Listen. Donald Trump is a known quantity. Donald Trump has been a known quantity, quite frankly, for decades, right? He is without question the most towering and dominant political personality. Now, after what he's done this time, probably in the last half of millennia, I can't think of it, right? So I think within the context of what was accomplished 2 days ago, which was not, it even surprised me, who was virtually certain that he would win the election, saving apart for whatever shenanigans may have happened, right? I think now you're going to find that practicality and pragmatism is going to be the order of the day. I mean, if you look back on and you separate and you filter out the things that Donald Trump said and how they were interpreted / skewed within the media, and what in fact happened, right? And the most glaring one is in 2016, that the world was going to come to an end with Donald Trump. It's going to explode. It's going to be the most incendiary environment you can imagine. Here's a man who is completely unpredictable and is going to just, and send the world down, down the laundry chute. And the exact opposite happened. It was the least conflicted 4 years in American and Western history. Right, he did have his own way of projecting diplomacy through strength, along the lines of a Teddy Roosevelt. We very much like that. We know what happened with Kim Jong-un, insults here and there. It's a build and break thing. Trump engages in build and break, and he kept us fairly secure and fairly safe and without conflict, give or take 1 or 2 things for 4 years. So I think now there's going to be a canon of the usual words, right? I mean, there's something called Godwin's law, which says once an argument goes on long enough, some inference to Hitler happens, right? I think that's changed now. Godwin's law has become racism, and when you're having a debate with somebody and they throw out Hitler, it's almost like running home to mommy saying, I can no longer debate you, right? So I'm going to throw in Hitler. Because when that happens, you're like, oh, okay. And similarly now, that's racist. What does that even mean? So I don't know how Donald Trump could have gotten the African-American support that he did, right? And he did. I'm talking about male and female in droves, in spite of Beyonce, in spite of Barack Obama coming on and telling black men, basically, you'd be stupid to vote for this man, right? They rejected it. I don't know how he won Florida by 14 points. I don't know how he flipped Arizona with all those Latinos, right? If he's a racist. Because if you're saying Donald Trump is a racist, then you're saying that the people who support him are stupid. The Latinos and the African Americans that have supported him are dumb, right? So I think we have to look really objectively at the accomplishments of the individual, the things that he has said, the team that he has built now, which is just astonishing. When you look at the Elon Musk, the J.D. Vances, the Tulsi Gabbards, Robert F. Kennedy, Tucker Carlson. I mean, these are accomplished people that are prepared, who love America and are prepared and love the world, quite frankly, and are prepared to start taking the country and the world forward. So Trump's campaign was one of sensibility. It was one of, certainly he had plans and ideas. It wasn't just a campaign about the other side is bad, right? And and there's something called the invisible hand in economics. And then there's something called the invisible line in social behavior. I think everything recalibrates eventually. And I think the 4 years of attacks and everything else, the American population just said, you know what? We want to get back to this calibrated line, this straight line of of normality. And I think that's what happened. You know, as MLK said, the arc of justice is long, but it bends, right? And I think it finally bent back straight for Donald Trump. So I think we have to respect the accomplishment of Monday. This is the greatest mandate, greater than Reagan, that any U.S. president has ever gotten in modern recorded history. And there's a reason for it, right? So we can now that we understand that, we can now go into what this means, I guess, for us in the Caribbean. But the fear-mongering of Trinidad going to be able to go to America, and that's just sensational nonsense. And it really should not even be. People are free to feel that way. But I'm also free to say that it's sensational nonsense. It's just not going to happen.
Talk to me about what this means for Trinidad and Tobago. Oh no, there's also another. So we talk about the immigration, but then some persons talk about, you know, what impact that would have on tariffs, what impact it would have on the oil and gas industry, especially with, you know, us placing so much of our hope into, you know, dragon gas and stuff like that. The dragon deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the bigger issue, right? And everybody now, and you know, and it's part of human nature. You refine a global situation down to what really affects you, right? So it's really think globally and act locally, right? And I think, you know, countries make decisions that are in their best interest, right? Now, one of the biggest blunders that we have made and continue to make, certainly politically, because we're an immature country and we have not broken away from the shackles, the mental shackles that Bob Marley certainly spoke about for the last 50 or 55 years. Every single year, right, we go on and we, every single 5 years, I should say, or 4 years, or whenever our elections are called, because the whole idea of calling elections at any given time is such an insult to a republic, right? Because what ends up happening is you have both parties are always on election footing. Because at any given time, remember Manning said it's in my back pocket, right? So the opposition doesn't have time to really construct messages and attack issues because they never know when election is going to be called. So they're on election footing, right? So with that being said, every 5 years, we worry about the Minister of Finance. That's the big shot, that's the big man, right? Minister of Energy, second big man. National Security, which is important, right? One of the ministries that we have never given any major credence to is Foreign Affairs, right? Now, Foreign Affairs affects a country domestically because when you have an issue like you have now, whether it's Dragon or any other issue, let's call them the majors, right? The MNCs, the multinational corporations. You need to have the ability to deal with that company abroad, whether it's Houston, whether it's London, whether it's in Holland for Shell, or whatever the case may be. What we should have now is a Minister of Foreign Affairs who is making a case to our counterparts in the US that, listen, we understand your geopolitical issues with Venezuela, right? And we know they're important to you. However, we have been one of your staunchest allies in the region for the last 40 or 50 years, right? The cornerstone of our relationship is cooperation, right? We need to have this deal, right? This Dragon deal is critical to us. It's critical to us and the continuity of our I guess, our social existence, right? Our economic existence, right? But I don't know how much of that conversation has been had, right? And it's not just germane to just the Dragon deal. I just mean generally. So now you find yourself, right? And I'm sure the Prime Minister and the officials in the party now were hoping for a Harris presidency because they would have assumed there would have been a little bit more malleability and ability to discuss, right? But the point is, it's a concept of fragile and anti-fragile. We are sitting down there, our destiny is hitched to who wins the White House. But if we have previously maintained a relationship, maintained channels of communication and dialogue with our biggest trading partner on the globe and being within their sphere of influence, we've been in a position now that no matter who wins the presidency, the requirement and the needs of Trinidad and Tobago are going to be tabled, right? And I think that's the bigger issue. As far as what happens with Dragon, I can't answer that question. But I don't think what happens with Dragon would have been largely different on whoever won the White House, right? So we do have some concerns, but I don't think there's a cause for panic. I think if there is an ability to have meaningful and constructive dialogue with the White House, I think it certainly will exist in this incoming White House, but I just don't think that we have set ourselves up appropriately. Because, I mean, can you name the last 4 foreign affairs ministers? I can't. I know Amy Brown is...
Not without Google.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know Dukaran was there sometime and Rambachan was there, but the point is, but I can name the last 5 ministers of finance, and I can name the last 5 AGs, right? So it's important, and I think from that perspective, we need to begin to change and pivot exactly how we think in Trinidad, civically, politically, and socially.
Okay, you just said we need to begin to change. How? Give me some details. It's a very deep and wide statement.
So one of the first things, right? And you said, how does this situation in America affect us now, right? In what regard? Now, when you look at it surface level, you think about Dragon. You think about, oh God, I mightn't get a visa. Oh God, I can't go Disney World, right? Right, no problem. And at retail level, you're going to think that because most citizens, at the end of the day, are concerned about what affects them, right? And you have every right to have a concern about what affects you, right? But how about the social engagement of the United States with regards to this election, and the fact that you have a population, or certainly 81 million of them, or how many other people voted for Donald Trump this rounds, that have a desire to be great. They have a genuine, innate desire for their country to be better, right? That's what's lacking in Trinidad. I mean, we don't, and even looking now at Dragon, right? What Dragon is we're like an alcoholic, and you're looking into this glass box, and you're seeing a case of whiskey. And you say, oh God, I need that. I need to have that. And you're looking through the glass and you're seeing it there. It's Dragon, and you're seeing it there, and we need it. But it's not addressing the fact that, right, that our alcoholism. It's not addressing the fact that we need meaningful change in how we do things. Because what's going to happen, whether it was Kamala or whether it's Trump who says, I'll be merciful, have your Dragon. What happens then? We get the case of whiskey, right? We lubricate ourselves for what? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? What happens then? The whiskey finish, and we are now like a junkie again, looking for the next case of whiskey, right? So when I say change, I mean the change has to start with us. It has to start with us by making sure the people that we put in charge, right, are a reflection of what we want. Right, so I don't want to be banging on that glass, looking for that case of Johnny Walker every 5 years. And that's what we're doing now. So we are panicking. But on the flip side of it, if you say diversification, and that's a big D word, it's like the F word is a D word, right? There's 2 big D words, and we can touch on one after, which is devaluation. But one is diversification, right? I'm sure there are companies who have come here. I'm sure there are companies who have considered here, but may have spoken with some of the other multinationals that are here, or people like who are in business in Trinidad. And you come down and you look. It's like when Manning had this grand plan for the International Financial Center, right? Part of it was hubris. He wanted to come down on BWIA at the time and bank by Hyatt and look and see JP Morgan and Bank of America and Santander and Bank of Bilbao and feel we're like Hong Kong, right? So it's partially driven by hubris, but I have no problem with that. But you want to compete with Miami. So these guys would come down here and they'd say, okay, internet accessibility and 4 out of 10. Infrastructure and roads and access in and out, 3.5 out of 10, right? Stability of the electrical grid, 2 out of 10. I mean, there have been days, Marsha, we've lost
1
power.
out of 10.
Well, what? We've lost power for 12 hours, right? Productivity in the workplace, and the list goes on. And this,
I mean, in the West, there was, and this was this year, electricity went every single day in Carenage for something like 2 weeks, every single day, even if it was for 30 seconds, even if it went and came back on. You
right.
could tell, you could tell electricity went because your microwave time changes. At
Yeah.
least once a day, the microwave time reset to 0
Yeah. So,
for
but
weeks.
they
For
check,
weeks.
and they're not going to invest. They're going to say, listen, I'm better off in Honduras or better off wherever the case may be. So change has to come from us. Change has to be not be when you lose power, like exactly what you just said. Well, boy, that's a third world. You have to expect that. When you look and consider $3 or $4 trillion has passed through in our what I call the federal budget, the national budget, in the last 35 to 40 years. Sit down and $3 trillion. That's not 6 zeros. That's not 9 zeros. That's 12 zeros. And we now are sitting down where crime is escalating, and basically every single basic and essential service is dysfunctional to the point where citizens can't get public transport safely and securely. You cannot get home and be that you have running water. I mean, it's absolute comedy. So we talk about Trump winning an election and what racist undertones there may be, or if we can't get a visa, it just tells you that as a nation, we have major issues. We are not prepared to face and understand and put the demands on the people that we elect. We have to understand the importance of your agency and your franchise. When I go there and I dip my finger in that ink, it's a hell of a thing. You must look at that like it's ripping your child away from you. I am giving you my consent, right? We take it for granted, and our politicians take it for granted. So by extension, when they get there, they're like, well, Marsha gave me her consent like it was nothing. She went inside and she voted, or in some instances, a $10 Chinese food box and a t-shirt. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. I remember the UNC when they were campaigning. Remember the video? And I'm not maligning them. It's part of our, and I think it was a couple of them on the back of a truck, and kids running after them, and they were tossing t-shirts at them like they were, and I said, this is where our politics is reached. Painting PNM or UNC on the road every 15 yards, painting it on a road. It's an insult to us. You're basically saying you're so mentally cheap. You're such a cheap, you're a puncheon and Sprite. I don't even have to buy you a Baileys. It's puncheon and Sprite. Right? It's nothing. You all are so cheap. You all are so easy to get your franchising agency. I didn't even have to go far. Right? So you want to talk about change? That's where the change has to be. And that's why, to me, I look at somebody like Donald Trump, and he has said, I want a better citizen. I want somebody who, and I will outline what I'm going to do, and I'm going to promise what I'm going to do, so that people now will say, you know what? I am now going to vote on an issue, whether it's a single voter issue, which are many of those, whether it's no tax on tips, whether it's abortion, whatever the case may be, right? But he has created, engaged, that's his biggest accomplishment to me. He's created an engaged electorate, right? And he's gotten 81 million of them to say, we want you. We want you. So when we talk about change starts with us, to make sure the people that we put in charge are not only compassionate, but they're competent, right? And I don't think we've had that. I think Trinidad has a ton load of talent, right? But unlike the more developed countries, why would you go into politics in Trinidad? So what ends up happening is you have people that go in there because they see it as a means to an end. And we find ourselves 45 years later, $3 trillion later, exactly in the same place that we were, having the same discussions and the same arguments. So when you ask yourself, where are we? We can't worry about America. We should be in a position now. And do you know, Marsha, in 1967, we had a higher GDP than Singapore. Singapore had no natural resources, no arable land. They still don't, right? But they had people and they had leadership. And look at Singapore now. We were a model that Singapore looked at in the mid-60s. And look at where Singapore is today. And look at where Trinidad and Tobago is today. So ask yourself, how do we change? Well, Michael Jackson had a great song. It's called Man in the Mirror. And it starts with me. I'm not exonerating myself. It starts with me. So I
But
think for all of the naysayers, Trump, if we had Trump
wait,
there,
you said he created an engaged electorate, and you spoke about the casualness with which we take our right to vote. I also think that we somehow think that that's the end of our responsibility, to dip our finger, and then, well, we pull back and we tune off, and there's no accountability for the rest of the 4 or 5 years, as you said. It's only at election time do we understand that, oh, look, did you do your civic responsibility? I said, I've been doing it for the last 5 years. you know um and so I know you say it starts with the man in the mirror, and maybe we're preaching to the choir because we both are here, trying to be the change that we want to see. But there are two things that you said there. Why go into politics? And Donald Trump was able to create an engaged electorate. How do we I'm not looking to the current leadership of either UNC or PNM, by the way, to do that. I don't think that it benefits them to have an engaged electorate. How do you and I create in our own sphere of influence that engaged electorate? How do we get people involved in getting into politics? Because quite frankly, I do think that for the last 30, 40 years, the persons that got involved in politics are those who think, how I could get a little contract, how I could get, this, and how I could. It's all been self-servers. And those who are good people always say, boy, why are you getting into that? You go mess up your good name. Look at all that you've worked for. You're willing to risk all of that to get into politics. Politics, I can't apply for a job. I've gone up against the prime minister of the country. You think I could apply for a job? That, I mean, I'm fortunate, that we have our own company and stuff, but it wasn't easy. It most certainly wasn't easy after going up against a sitting prime minister, and I would consider him a vindictive prime minister, but it was not easy, right? So what benefit, and I mean, not benefit, because the benefit would be a better Trinidad and Tobago, but why would you speak out? Why would you get into politics? Why are you doing what you're doing?
and I'll tell you why. Our system is designed for failure, right? Our system. Now remember, we are a hybrid of the Westminster system, right? So I know you had sent me. I'd seen something that I believe it was Ronald Bowler. Somebody had written about
Yes.
about a Trinidad and American elected.
There's an elected king now because he got the Senate, the House, and everything.
But let me tell you something. And he got more than that. He got the House, he got the Senate, he got the White House, he got the popular vote, he got the governors. The 31, it's more than 50% of the state governors are Republican. He won the majority of state legislatures. I mean, it's the biggest mandate since Reagan. But Marsha, he won it, right? Now, and he became king. And Donald Trump was a big man 40 years ago. So this is not going to make him a megalomaniac. Donald Trump is already there. It's a natural succession for him. But let's fast forward to Trinidad, right? You want to talk about king. We have a system where the prime minister or the party leader handpicks every member of the lower house, right? You have to go to what is called the screening committee, right? Marsha Walker wants to go, you have to go, and Manning or Browley or Kamala, whoever it is, has to approve you as the head of the screening committee. So then, after the election is won or lost, that same prime minister who elected, he decided who will run for Toco, Manzanilla, Port of Spain West, etc., then picks the entire of the upper house and picks 15 members of the Senate. You lose the election, when you get consolation prize, approximately Shakonia, you pick 9 senators, but you also pick them. So our entire chamber, both lower and upper house, are not selected by the people. When you go to vote, you're voting for a flag, red or yellow. But the person that's there is not a representative of the people, not selected by the people. Let's keep going. Every single state board chairman, every regional health authority chairman, every board member, right? Every single one is selected by the government, right? Let's fast forward even further. The president, who's supposed to be the ultimate check and balance, because I'm not going to insult the sitting president or any of the past ones, but we should take that house and turn it into a museum and banish the office of president, because who selects the president? The majority of parliament, right? So we call it an independent office. It's a joke. Who then picks the independent senators? That independent president. So you tell me where, anywhere in this country, there's representation. You tell me where our franchise and our agency has been respected. It hasn't been. It hasn't been. So we have an emperor here. We have a king here right now. And before him, we had a queen. And before her, we had a king. And so it goes. And that's how it's designed. So we go there and we put our finger in the ink and we vote for whoever the case may be. It's an exercise in futility. On Independence Day, all the kids go out and they fly their flag as the president walks by and makes this nurturing statement or nourishing statement, exercise in futility. So that's how, and that's why people don't get into politics. Because I am not, if you change, and I've written a position paper for a new party, independent party, Trinidad and Tobago, and one of the cases is that the people select their representative. And after the people have voted in various rounds or whatever the case may be, there are rules and runoffs and so on. That person then goes, all of them after the candidacy, and they meet the political leader and say, hello, I'm Peter George. I want Tabakit. Oh, nice to meet you. I meet you for the first time. So when I go to Parliament, like in England, that's the difference between us and England. The people still select. You've heard about, they go to Parliament and they put the plight of the people up and they get shot down and they step down. Because if I cannot represent the people, then I shouldn't be the representative. So that's the main reason why. So Ronald Bowler, who I respect greatly, I read his stuff all the time, right, says that. I don't know if he said it tongue in cheek. I think it was Ronald. It may not have been Ronald. It may have been somebody else.
It was him.
Maybe it's tongue in cheek, but we have an emperor right here. Right here. An emperor by design. Every single person. So you think the chamber head, you think the TTMA head. And I used to get angry as a younger man. But now I don't, because it's the system. You think they're going to go and challenge the government? You've seen what's happened. You felt it. You've experienced it firsthand. What do you think is going to happen? Right? So you can't cross the government, and by extension, and you think that Americans went to war for a 2% tax on a tea, a drink they didn't even drink with tea in the Boston Tea Party, but it was the principle, and that's where it came from. No taxation without representation. We have no representation here. We have a functioning government. We have a hybrid of this West system, but do we have representation? Absolutely not. Are we going to make any progress forward? We are not. When you find a politician or a political leader or a party that's prepared to say, we are going to change, meaningfully change this, but then they have to get the mandate. They have to get 33 or 34. How is that going to happen? Until then, you're going to have 23-18, 24-19, 22-10. And what happens then? All you can really do is run the finances of the country for 5 years. Nothing changes. Arguments, fighting, infighting, bad talking. They got together happily once. Pension and pay. Everybody knocked the bench and they went and they high-five each other and shake hands. I mean, if that was not the greatest insult to every citizen in this country, I don't know what was. I mean, every single day is bad talking them and privileges committee and walk out. One time, they spoke decently, and they spoke civilly to each other, was to make sure they get plenty money when they get out of Parliament. All right. If that was not the ultimate slap in the face, and the media was like, hello, and they moved on. Because every 9 days something happens here. So you want change in Trinidad? The change, maybe we have to demand it. Maybe we have to demand constitutional reform. Or maybe we have to trust that a new party comes along and they don't get laughed at and ridiculed and say, oh, you're going to lose your deposit. And then what's the point? Why? I'm not going to do it. When I say a person is not going to do it. So we end up with the same recycled people coming over and over again, right, that put party first. Because both of our major parties in Trinidad, you're voting party, not even party first, party only. And then every now and then, a piece of legislation passes, right, that benefits the country, but it's like monkeys throwing darts, right? They did that in the stock market in the old days, and it monkeys through the darts, and some of the picks outperform the money managers because the dart is going to end up on IBM or Apple occasionally, and you get a law and you say, "Shit, boy, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that."
Okay.
You sing, and they beat the table till their hands get sick. But the reality is, nobody of any ilk or any substance is really going to go into politics. And the ones that do go in there in Trinidad and they own within weeks. Within weeks, because you either toe the party line or you're out. Or you're out, right? So it's going to be a very difficult challenge for us. And I just find it rich that people want to, and I'm not saying they want to assail Trump, who went out there, stuck to his message has not changed for 10 years, right? And it's not a political comeback because he never went anywhere. There was not a single day of the Biden administration that Trump's name wasn't mentioned, if not by Karine Jean-Pierre, by somebody. So Trump never went anywhere. He's a personality. But don't come now and assail him or what he says and what he does. And you look at the situation that we have, which is dysfunctional and perverted. Our national dialogue is demented. We talk about nothing, right? And it's fear-mongering. And you tell yourself, where do we go? And we have nowhere to go under these conditions. Trinidad's a fantastic place. But if we don't begin to change how we think and the expectations that we place on our elected leaders, right, then I promise you, Marsha, as God is my witness, 15 years from now, you and I will have this conversation. I'll be significantly grayer, possibly bald, and we'll be talking the exact same thing, right?
That is my worry. That is my worry. You know, I mean, because do we need a Trump then? Do we need a bigger than life personality to really come and pull us out of our slumber?
I think they exist in Trinidad. They're here. It's how open we are to them. How open are we to Trump? A Trump-like person. Yeah. And maybe exactly like Trump, but what I'm saying to somebody who's
I understand.
Self-made, who is I genuinely believe Donald Trump loves America. And when he goes to his rallies with 25 says, I love you guys. Now, obviously, he's saying it not necessarily tongue-in-cheek, but it's more of a blanket statement. But I think he generally means it. I tell my staff every time I love you. I kiss my staff from time my way. I kiss them. I love you. It's your birthday. Rub your head. Do I love them like I love my children? No. Or my wife? No. But I generally, when I say I love you, I don't mean it's not just some soundbite. I mean it, and I think he means it. Can you countenance any of our politicians locally saying, I love you and taking it seriously? I mean, they may have. Kamala may have said, I love you. Kamala may have said it. I'm not saying, but Pandey, I mean, who do they really love us? Well, how they run the country doesn't show that they love us. The sacrifices Donald Trump has made. The man is, Conor McGregor, after he got shot, said, this is a 78-year-old self-made billionaire. He should be on a yacht in the Mediterranean looking for new golf courses. But he's spitting out bullets in Pennsylvania, right? Donald Trump didn't have to do this. And whether he's driven by ego, I don't care. Give me a man in Trinidad or a woman who's driven by ego, but do the right thing and bring to me a message. And you know what? I'll be the first in line. Right? I gave up my US passport in 2013 for politics. That's when I was younger and more ideological. I regret it because I don't see myself ever being in a position to make political change because I don't want a purity bus route pass. I don't want that. I want a country that I know how I built my businesses and how I want to contribute to my country. I want to make my country better, but I will never have the opportunity because I'll be ridiculed. Maybe because of my skin color or because of the old 1%, all that nonsense, all this crap that is perpetuated and it's tiring. The country has to move away from that. But you know what's sad? The politicians use it. The country uses it. And that's why I say our dialogue is demented. So we don't need Trump. There are people in Trinidad who have the capacity to make this country lined with gold. Right? They have the morals to do it. They have the ethics to do it. They have the talent to do it. But when you look at what happens if you make that decision, right? You tell yourself, you know what? No, no, and that's why I respect Trump madly, because he took it on his chin for going on from when they laughed at him till now, and he stayed there. And look at the prize he's got now. He is, without question, the most powerful human being on this planet, without question. Without, I mean, and you said the U.S. president is leader of the free world. I'm talking about outside of that. He is the most potent and dominant figure on the planet. And it took 10 years or 8 years, and it took a huge trial in 2020 to accept finally what he didn't believe. Because I don't think he lost election in 2020, right? And to come back to where he is now, that kind of person, he have my respect. And I will listen to his words, and I will pass through those words and filter it to see if he's really is racist. I have black friends in America, dozens of them, who adore this man. Obviously, living in Miami for 25 years, I have Latino friends, both Spanish, I have Mexican, I have Puerto Ricans. They love the man, or some don't. But give me a Trump in Trinidad. We have them here, Marsha. But how do we activate them? Our system doesn't want Trump in Trinidad. We don't want it. We want to keep it the way that it is, and keep us grasping at this this artificial parachute pulley that's going to get better someday. It's nonsense. It's not going to get better under these conditions.
How do we activate them is the question. It is 6 p.m. I have devaluation to touch, but we did not get to touch it. The time flew. When you're talking larger than life personalities, maybe that's what happens. Do you want to call someone that you would say could be a Trump, or you want to not?
Well, no. I mean, I don't think there's a specific, and don't take my words in context. I mean, there are people. I mean, you have ultimately talented people like Vasan, who's on before. You have guys who have the ability to be building blocks, right? So
I think there's a difference between talent and that larger than life personality.
That's also spotting talent, Marsha. I mean, having talent is one thing, but the ability to spot talent is also a talent. And my last vote in America before I renounced my citizenship was for Barack Obama, right? Because the message he sent to me was meaningful change, right? And he said, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. That's what he said. I want to be the dumbest guy in your room. Then he came here for the summit. He shook Chavez's hand. They traded books. He spoke of a return to diplomacy, a respect for international law, an olive branch to Islam, the closing of Guantanamo Bay. I said, good God, this man is going to change the world. I went to America next and I bought my Obama hat. 6 months later, he started. And he ended up bombing more countries and releasing more projectiles than George Bush. I mean, so the point is, how many more times are we going to be fooled, right? And the question is, in Trinidad, we've been fooled a lot, but spotting talent, and I think that's one of Trump's abilities to spot talent. So Vasan, there are many people who are building blocks to this country, but the question is finding that person who they can believe in, right? And then putting it all together and packaging it into something that can be sold and that people can genuinely believe in. Because they've been lied to before. One of the questions Fazir asked me on a show, he said, Peter George, he says, if you've been in love before and we've been heartbroken, why we do it again? I said, because the human spirit is one that follows love. So the point is, even though you get jilted and you get, our word is horn, right? You go and you come out, you want to love again. Humans are never gonna stop loving unless you're dark. Right? You're not going to stop loving. You're not going to say, because I was duped, I'm never going to love again. No, you will. So if that message and that messenger comes along, that is morally and spiritually and ethically rich, right? I think, and obviously has a plan and has the ability to be tough. You got to be tough. The world's a tough place, Marsha. The world is not marshmallows and fairy dust. That's just what the reality is. I want a Trump who will shake your hand but tell you, don't mess with my country because I'll rain down hell on you like you can't imagine. But how's your wife? Good? Nice seeing you. Call me next week.
Yes.
That's what I want.
It's so true. It's so true. It is way past 6 o'clock now. So we've probably been cut off somewhere on air. It was a pleasure. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
You must re-invite this guy, Marsha,
Yes, we'll invite him again.
and have more time with him.
You have my number. Guys, thank you very much.
Yes,
All right.
thank you so much, Mr. George.
You see how fat I looked in TV, please. So send me the link. Don't forget.
Will do. Okay.
Keep well.
Okay, that's it for today's edition of Heart Talk with Marsha Walker. We also had Sajman Ali, Vasan Barrett, and of course, Mr. Peter George as our guests this afternoon and today evening. So until next Thursday when Marsha will return, that's it for today's edition of Heart Talk.